Good evening, and welcome back to Midnight Sleep Scientist. Let the room grow a little quieter now, the edges softening like distant coastlines at dusk. Somewhere beyond the window, night is draped across rooftops and trees, and above that, beyond the blue memory of day, the sky opens into its old architecture, a patient expanse, built not of stone or steel, but of light that has travelled longer than any road we know. Tonight we are going to wander that architecture gently. We'll begin with the oldest light still humming through the universe, like a forgotten radiator in a childhood home. From that soft afterglow we'll drift along the filaments and quiet voids, visit islands of starlight and the quiet curve of gravity, and find our own small address in the web. We'll meet horizons that are more like fog than fences, listen for messages braided into starlight, and imagine futures that do not hurry. And then, as always, we'll return to the room you are in now, to the weight of the covers and the easy company of sleep. You don't have to hold on to any of it. Let the words pass by like streetlights on a late train, steady, gentle, almost lulling. If you're still awake later, you can share where you're listening from tonight. For now, just settle. We'll begin. Imagine the lights of the city fading, block by block, until we are standing beneath a clear, untroubled sky. The air has the clean, tin bell taste of cold. Stars sharpen. The Milky Way rises like a river of ash blue silver, and then, softer still, beneath the stars, behind them, around them, there is a whisper. Not a sound, but an everywhere glow, a faint thermal murmur, soaking the universe the way warm water soaks fabric. This is the ceiling of ancient light, the afterglow of a time when everything was young and close and bright. If we could hold a hand to the cosmos, the way we hold a hand near a lamp, we might feel the slightest warmth from that first light, just a few degrees above absolute zero, a patient remnant from when the universe was less than 400,000 years old. Not an infant by our measure, perhaps, but by the universe's measure, still cradled in its first morning. Before that morning, things were thicker, hot, luminous fog, particles rushing and coupling and coming undone. Light tried to move, but the crowd was too dense. It bounced and rattled, endlessly delayed. Then cooling arrived like a slow permission. Electrons settled into orbits, atoms took their first calm shapes, and the fog turned transparent enough for light to slip free to travel and keep traveling, long after the stage changed. What we feel as the cosmic microwave background is this afterglow, the cooled memory of that release, still arriving, still everywhere. A quilt of faint, nearly even warmth wrapped around all space. Nearly even, nearly, and in the almost lies the story. If the afterglow were perfectly smooth, perhaps nothing would have gathered. No clumps, no clouds, no stars gnawing the dark with the bright teeth of fusion. But the map of this ancient light shows freckles, tiny temperature ripples, like the shiver on a lake at dusk. 1/1000th of a degree here, 1,000th there, little swells of density that gravity, patient as moss, would slowly amplify. Where the glow was a breath warmer, matter gathered a breath more. Where it was cooler, matter eased away. Over long, long years, the small became structure, threads, knots, the web. There is humility in those freckles. They suggest a universe that began not with perfect symmetry, but with a textured tenderness, like hand-thrown clay. They also ask us to speak gently about what we know. Our maps are good, astonishingly good, but they are still maps, stitched from satellites and detectors, from calibrations, from instruments that feel the sky like fingertips feel a pulse. There are uncertainties, and scientists tend to cradle those uncertainties carefully, not as flaws but as invitations to keep listening. For the moment, though, let's simply stand under that ceiling and let its calm wash over us. The light we are seeing is not visible to our eyes. It's in the microwave part of the spectrum, wavelengths that would warm your coffee, not paint a scene. Yet if you could translate it into sight, the whole sky would glow in every direction with a soft mottled pattern. No center, no edge, like the inside of a seashell illuminated from everywhere at once. You might imagine it the way you imagine the quiet hum of your home at night, the refrigerator's gentle purr, the baseboard heater's sigh, the near silent breath of an old clock. The universe too has a house hum, a background that never entirely goes dark. From this height, time loosens its collar. We step back and back again. 400,000 years after the beginning, then 1,000,000, 10, 100. Gravity continues its slow choreography. The ripples in the afterglow become seeds of gathering. Gas cools, clouds condense, and in the bellies of those clouds the first stars press themselves alight. We are not there yet in our journey. Those chapters will come, but the path begins here, in the slightness of almost the way a melody begins in a nearly silent inhale. It is strange, perhaps comforting, how much of what we are comes from this gentle unevenness. Your street, your pillow, the night bus rolling by with a soft hydraulic hush, the pine cupboard you tap with your knuckle and hear that warm wooden note, all of it coalesced because the sky's first blanket was not perfectly smooth. Perfection may be elegant, but it gives little to hold. The universe chose the hospitality of texture. There's another way to feel this. Think of memory. Not the sharp cinematic kind, but the low, even glow of being alive across years. The way certain rooms always felt warm. The way certain winters carried a blue light in late afternoon. The cosmic afterglow is like that. A memory of the universe's early room spread so wide that every direction we look, we're looking into it. And because the universe has been expanding, that light has been stretched like a long elastic ribbon, slowed and cooled into the microwave hum we measure today. The longer the ribbon, the deeper the tone. The further the light has traveled, the softer its color. We might wonder quietly without pressing how sure we can be. The answer, softened with care, is quite sure, but never absolute. Different instruments have listened in different ways across decades. Their maps agree in the broad strokes and debate the fine embroidery. Even in debate, the pattern holds, the ancient glow is there, nearly even stippled with the seeds of everything to come. If the sky were a page and the afterglow its watermark, we could tilt the page and see the faint emblem shine through the text of stars and dust and galaxies. What we read in that watermark is a kind of cosmological lullaby. The universe was young, it cooled, light went free, slight ripples became scaffolding, and here we are, late in the story and early in the morning, depending how you keep time. Let your shoulders drop a little. The bed cradles you. Outside, a car makes the long, slow turn at the end of the block. Somewhere a dog shifts, tags whispering. Inside, the mind's window is still open to the sky. The ceiling of ancient light keeps its patient watch, not asking for attention, simply present like the quietest nightlight imaginable. There is a small kindness in looking up and finding not only darkness but a history of warmth. The numbers, if we listed them, might seem cold. The light itself is not. It has brushed the edges of everything for almost the entire age of the cosmos. It crossed voids that would dwarf our entire galaxy and arrived without hurry, as if time itself were a soft couch and the universe had decided to sit for a while. From here we can let the narrative widen. Those freckles in the afterglow, those thousandths, grew into a foam of structure spread across billions of light years. Imagine a lace of river deltas seen from far above, except the rivers are gravity and the water is matter. Where threads intersect, galaxies will thrive. Between threads, calm expanses will open like sleeping fields in winter. But we won't rush. Tonight is slow science. The next chapter will follow the threads. For now, rest with this. Even the largest story begins with a texture you can barely feel. The universe at its brightest beginning, left behind a gentle heat that still surrounds you. It is not the heat of urgency. It is not the heat of a crowded day. It is the faint warmth of a world that learned to let light go, so it could go on. If sleep arrives, let it. If you remain, imagine the glow as a soft flannel folded over your shoulders. Above the roofline, above the city, above the thin blue shell of air, the ceiling of ancient light stretches without center or edge, humming in a key too low to hear, steady as the tide. We are small within it, but not lost, simply held as if the night itself were remembering us back. Close your eyes a little more. Everything can be simpler now. We'll follow the filaments soon. For the moment, let the afterglow keep watch and drift. Picture, if you like, a twilight walk across a broad salt flat after rain. The surface is pale and quiet, but when you look closely, hairline ridges form hexagons, lines meeting lines, delicate seams that guide the eye. Now widen that image until it spans not a valley, not a country, but the whole observable sky. In place of salt ridges, trace luminous threads, galaxies strung like beads, and between them basin-deep hush. This is the universe's lacework, the cosmic web, a pattern that took billions of years to whisper itself into being. We arrive at this web by following those freckles from the ancient glow, small differences that gravity, patient as a gardener, coaxed into structure. Where the early universe was a breath denser, matter gathered a little sooner. The gathered matter tugged on more matter, the way a snowflake invites more snow. Little knots became bigger knots, and the spaces between them opened like clearings. Over time, vast, uncounted, almost leisurely time, threads formed between knots, bridges of galaxies spanning distances that dissolve ordinary comparison. Filaments connect clusters the way footpaths connect villages across a sleeping countryside, and in the wide spaces between, voids rest like lakes of quiet air. If you could step outside the galaxy and drift for a while, if you could let yourself be carried on a slow current of expansion until whole superclusters reduce to soft winkles, you might see it the way simulations suggest a three-dimensional skein, a tangle of luminous veins arranged not in flat patterns, but in depth, each thread branching and merging. It resembles in mood, if not in detail, the branching of rivers, the spread of roots, the neural filigree of a brain at rest. Nature loves to reuse motifs. Perhaps it is not that the universe is a tree, or a mind, or a delta, only that growth, diffusion, and gentle competition sculpt similar forms across scales. We speak of filaments and voids with a confidence that might seem surprising, given how slowly this all unfolds. But we have ways of listening that don't require touching. We map galaxies like lanterns seen from a hill, counting where lanterns are plentiful and where the hills go dark. We watch how light bends around mass, a soft lensing that hints at invisible scaffolding. We compare observed patterns to the quiet games of numerical worlds, where particles in a computer follow rules we think are true, and build a web we can explore freely. The matches are never perfect. They don't need to be. They reassure us that our story is in broad strokes pointed in the right direction. In such maps, filaments appear as long, faint strokes of brightness, sometimes tens or hundreds of millions of light years in span. Clusters, the knots, glisten at intersections, crowded neighborhoods where galaxies swing in shared gravity, their halos overlapping like streetlights on mist. Between these intersections, the filaments thread through emptier country, thinner and more transparent, so that a traveler drifting along one might feel the density change the way you feel, air thicken near a shoreline. And then, the voids. They are not nothing. Nothing is hard to find, but they are less, fewer galaxies. Sparser gas, lower temperature, longer drifts between chance meetings. Imagine standing in a winter field after snowfall. The sound muffled into a kindly silence. That is the feeling of a void. Not loneliness, but spaciousness. In a cosmos that sometimes looks like a city of lights, voids are the parks, the dark lakes, the places where quiet can collect. If the web is a conversation, voids are the listening. We might ask softly why the universe chose a web and not a uniform fog. Gravity, though, does not favor the flat, and even it amplifies what is already slightly more. In the early sea of particles, sound like waves of compression left alternating bands, denser, then less like ripples that froze into memory. As the universe grew, those bands gave structure a head start. Out of that starter, filaments baked themselves as if along pre-marked lines, not predetermined in detail but sketched in likelihood. Over billions of years, dark matter, transparent, reluctant to interact except through gravity, provided the frame, while ordinary matter fell onto that frame like dew onto spider silk. Stars lit where the dew beaded, galaxies grew where beading was richest, clusters where many threads crossed. There is a gentle humility in noting that much of this skeleton is invisible to our eyes. We infer it from how galaxies move and how light curves. We know it in the way you know wind by what it touches. The cosmos keeps some mysteries wrapped in soft gauze. We work around the edges, patient, content to know enough to proceed. What of our place in this net? If you picture a filament as a country road, our Milky Way sits near an intersection with a handful of neighboring roads close by. Our local group, Milky Way, Andromeda, and several dozen smaller companions, drifts along a flow within a larger basin of attraction. The names cartographers have given to these basins, clusters, superclusters, attractors, sound grand, but the feeling, if you sit with it, is intimate. We are afloat with our neighbors on a slow river through a vast drainage, pulled by the mild slope of gravity toward and away from larger gatherings. It's not a march, it's a drift. Filaments are not rigid. They are more like streams, thickening here, thinning there, merging, branching, fading, at their scales. Motion is a concept, stretched almost beyond recognition. When a filament shifts or a void empties further, millions of years pass like a single breath. Such durations can be dizzying if we grip them too hard. So we soften our grip. We turn them into a cadence, years like rain, millennia like tides, epochs like seasons. In these seasons the web matures. Some clusters accrete new members, others quiet. Voids grow gently, as matter trickles out along dark gradients, the way fog slides down a slope and pools in the lowlands. Perhaps you notice a kinship with the way human settlements spread, villages connected by paths, paths paved into roads, roads joined into highways, and between them fields and forests that still keep their hush. Our maps of the universe carry, in soft reflection, our maps of home. This is not to claim the cosmos thinks as we do, or that our towns are little galaxies. It is to suggest that pattern speaks to us in a common language. When we find familiar shapes at large scales, the mind relaxes. Things that might have felt alien become companionable. When we say void, the heart sometimes hears absence. Let's rename it for a moment. Let's call it the wide room. In wide rooms, everything has space to be what it is, without collision. A galaxy at the lip of a void spins its own story with fewer interruptions, like a lone skater carving long, untroubled arcs on a frozen lake. Gas in a void cools, drifts, waits, photons pass through with little to do. The wide room is not the end of the story, it's a pause that gives the story shape. On a night like the one you are having now, lying in a low-lit room, the web feels far away, and yet every soft lamp, every quiet device along your wall, every book spine catching a little amber, from plastics and metals to the calcium in your bones, owes something to how the web gathered matter. Filaments funneled gas into halos, halos fed galaxies, galaxies raised generations of stars that forged heavier elements and let them go. Those elements drifted, met, and became planets and soils and the color of your tea. The road from a filament to a cup is long but continuous, like a footpath that becomes a lane that becomes a street that leads you, eventually home. There are days when the web is a diagram in a paper, and nights when it is a feeling. Tonight, let it be a feeling. Let it be the sensation that there are connections everywhere, most of them gentle, many of them hidden, guiding rather than demanding. The universe, with its threads and crossings, is not a hierarchy, but a conversation. Centers are local, importance diffuses. The knot matters because the threads meet there. The threads matter because they join knots. The open spaces matter because they make threads visible. Balance is not something achieved once. It is a posture held over time. Scientists will keep refining the picture. Better surveys will add lanterns to the hill. New instruments will sharpen the silhouette of threads. We only suspect simulations will breathe with richer physics and show us where our rules need tuning. Uncertainties will be named and tamed, then replaced by subtler uncertainties. This is not a flaw in the story. It is how the story breathes between the breaths we can rest. If you like, close your eyes and trace a filament now. Start near our small address, then drift outward along a tenuous lane of galaxies. Feel the density, like a thinning mist. Pass clusters where the sky would be bright with neighbors. Pass long spans where only a few beacons hold the line. Notice how the thread leads you not to a stopping place, but to another crossing, another choice, another stretch of quiet path. Somewhere, across a wide room of space, another traveler, another galaxy, follows a different thread toward the same intersection, and you arrive together without hurry. Back in your room, the world contracts to the scale of a hand, a pillow, the rhythm of breath meeting the night air. The web is still there, behind the ceiling, beyond the clouds, a structure that doesn't ask to be finished or solved. It suggests instead a way to be connected without crowding, spacious without emptiness, patient without stillness. In that suggestion, sleep begins to gather. We will, in time, visit the crossings where gravity's hand is strongest. We will linger with the quiet curve that makes threads possible, and wander through the islands of starlight that bead along them. For now, let the filaments fade into a gentle impression, like the memory of a walkway under trees. Let the voids become lake water in late evening, dark and kind. You are held within a pattern that took its time. You can take your time too. Close your eyes a little more. The lines of the world blur into something soft and welcoming. Between the knots of thought, space opens. Between each breath, a moment widens. The universe keeps its slow lattice. The night keeps its promise. You keep only what is easy to keep. We'll follow gravity next. How it listens, how it gathers, how it curves the room around us, like a hand shaping clay. But not yet. For a while, rest in the web's hush and drift. Imagine a quiet room with a wooden floor. Set a heavy book in the center and watch how the boards barely bow, just enough that a marble, set loose from the edge, will wander inward as if it had heard its name. We might say the marble was pulled, but the softer truth is that it followed the shape the floor offered. Gravity in the great room of the universe is this subtle shaping, the way mass asks space to lean, and space, obliging, invites everything to move along its curves. We learn to speak of gravity as a force, an invisible hand tugging down, but the picture bends towards something even gentler, mass and energy telling space-time how to curve, curved space-time telling matter and light how to move. The older explanation is not wrong. It is a good lantern. The newer one is a window. Through it, gravity looks less like command and more like listening. A star listens to the room it has made. A planet listens to the star's room. The moon listens to the planets, and tides become the audible hush of that listening, oceans leaning, then leaning back twice each day. If you step outside on a clear night, you won't see curvature, not directly. What you notice instead are the paths it shapes. A comet returns as if remembering a conversation it had with the sun long ago. A planet moves faster near its star, slower when it drifts far. Its ellipse is a sentence with a long breathy clause. Light, which prefers the straight and the simple, will still yield to the room, bending a little as it passes a mass, like a cyclist following the tilted grain of a hillside road. We call that lensing. Galaxies behind galaxies smear into delicate arcs, and from those arcs we infer the presence of matter we cannot otherwise see, matter that darkly outlines the room's geometry. There is patience in gravity's work. It rarely shouts. Instead, it offers suggestions over long intervals, letting small differences add up until they become forms, clouds gathering, filaments tightening, clusters settling into the quiet hum of mutual orbit. We are, in a way, descendants of patience. The calcium in our bones was forged in stars that formed because gravity, over millions of seasons, persuaded gas to share a center. The iron in our blood cooled in the aftermath of a star's bright surrender, a finale choreographed by the same soft curves that first assembled the star from a drifting cloud. To feel your pulse is to feel a little history of curved space. In the earliest universe, before stars, gravity worked in the company of expansion. Space itself was stretching, a smooth, everywhere kind of growth, and inside that outward motion, gravity was busy with the small unevennesses we met in the ancient afterglow. Where the room leaned ever so slightly, matter lingered, and lingering became gathering. Gathering became light. But expansion never went away. It kept on and still keeps on, like a very slow breath. The universe has not finished exhaling. Gravity can bind local rooms, galaxies, clusters into durable communities, yet on the widest scales, expansion loosens what is not already held. There's a balance in this: places to gather, places to drift. If you were to float near a massive galaxy and watch a beam of starlight pass, you would notice that the beam curves as if the space through which it moves were slightly indented, like fabric depressed by a sleeping cat. Nearer still, you would find clocks behave differently, time itself running a shade slower down in the indent. This isn't a trick of instruments. It is the room's true behavior. Time swells and thins across the universe, according to the shape it has been given, so that now is a local word, like here, and the cosmic story is stitched from many simultaneities, each with its own delicate tempo. Sometimes gravity lifts its voice. When two heavy objects, black holes for instance, spiral inward and merge, the room doesn't only bend, it ripples. Waves travel outward at the speed of light, gentle tremors that pass through everything. We built instruments to feel those faint shivers, long tunnels of vacuum listening for picometer motions, and found them, like hearing the bass line of a song you thought was silent. It suggests that even the quietest rooms are alive with motion, and that the universe keeps a rhythm too large for our ordinary senses to catch. It might be tempting to turn gravity's curves into a story of inevitability, as though once the room leaned, every arc and orbit was fated. But uncertainty has a place here too. Clouds of gas are full of competing whispers, magnetic murmurs, turbulence, starlight pressure, and the path from a diffuse mist to a newborn sun is not a single line but a braided stream. Gravity is the main current. Yes, the slope that gives the water direction. Still, eddies and backwaters add their local poetry. Perhaps that is why the night sky holds so many kinds of structures, spirals and ellipses, rings and bars, lenses and streams. The rules are few, the outcomes many. On human scales, we feel gravity mostly as weight, the good weight of blankets, the reassuring pull of the bed. It steadies the cup on the table, lends a tone to your voice through the column of air. The same principle that sets a satellite in a gentle fall around Earth lets our bones know where down is so they can grow strong. The same curve that shapes a galaxy's halo shapes how rain returns to the sea. There is comfort in continuity. The near is kin to the far. If your thoughts begin to drift, let them. Imagine you are a small boat on a vast, calm bay. The tide rises so slowly you only notice when the rope slackens. The moon, you know without looking, is lifting the water's edge. Gravity is not asking for effort. It invites you to float in the room as it is. When worry tightens about tomorrow, about tasks and messages, remember that most motions in the universe are circular, not linear. They come around, they complete themselves, they offer another pass. We will keep listening to gravity as we move on to how its rooms host the islands of starlight we see on clear nights, to how those islands carry their own weather and seasons. For now we can rest in the sense that the world is gently shaped, that the path beneath us does not end abruptly, but curves into sleep the way a shoreline curves into a cove. The universe leans a little, we follow, the room holds. The night is kind. A spiral galaxy is the most familiar shape to the imagination. A bright core with arms that wind outward, not like painted ribbons, but like traffic patterns. Density waves that sweep through the disk and gather gas into beadwork. Where an arm passes, gas compresses, and in the compressed lanes, new stars spark, young, blue, impatient, lighting the arm like new storefronts on a festival night. Between the arms, the city is older, calmer, yellow with lived-in suns. Our home is such a spiral, a wide disk with a bar across the center, its arms more like feathered streams than tight curls, all turning slowly, the whole structure completing a rotation over hundreds of millions of years. We spin, but so gently that our ancestors and descendants will never feel the turn. Think of a night when the air was particularly clear and the Milky Way crossed the sky like a slow-breathing cloud. From far enough away, a galaxy looks like that, a city seen from a great height, neighborhoods of light, connected by avenues dimmer than the rest. We call them spirals, ellipticals, lenticulars, irregulars, as if we were naming seashells found along a shore. Each is an island of starlight, floating in the dark sea, carrying its own tides and histories. Elliptical galaxies are different, rounder, smoother, often larger, their light a mellow gold. They are cities after midnight. Few nurseries left, many elders burning quietly, the gas that would have made new stars long since used or warmed into a reluctance to fall. Their stars move on more tangled paths, a swarm rather than a parade, and the overall effect is of a settled place, past its growth spurt, content to glow. Irregulars refuse our neat categories, which is part of their charm. Some are dwarfs, modest gatherings with a handful of bright knots. Others are tidal sculptures, galaxies caught mid-encounter, their forms stretched and twisted by a close pass, like taffy pulled toward a neighbor. Interactions do this. They stir, they disrupt, they seed new stars along the pulled-out streams. In a universe where nothing is truly stationary, galaxies are social, and their social lives reshape them over time. Two spirals can merge and, after a long, slow blending, relax into an elliptical. Companions can tug bars into being, or trigger waves that sweep through disks and light whole arcs in newborn blue. If you were to stroll, in imagination, from the center of a spiral outward, the neighborhoods would change with your steps. Near the core, stars skitter in orbits, tilted every which way, like pedestrians in a crowded square. Out in the disk, paths settle into the common language of rotation, and spiral arms guide the eye. Further still, in the dim halo, ancient stars drift among globular clusters, and somewhere among them, an invisible sphere of dark matter extends the city's reach, the unseen infrastructure that keeps the outer lights moving a little faster than our visible mass alone would allow. We know that infrastructure by its effect, curves that hold velocities that keep their shape. It is another way the universe asks us to trust inference, to accept that what is evident to instruments may be more complete than what pleases the eye. At the hearts of many galaxies lives a black hole, massive by human telling, tiny by the galaxies. Most of the time it sits quietly, the way a deep well sits at the center of a garden, present, shaping but not consuming the scene. Occasionally, when gas funnels inward, the innermost region flares with energy, and the galaxy's core becomes a beacon brighter than the rest combined. We call these active phases by different names, quasars, Seyferts, depending on angle and appetite, but the feeling is much the same. A city center briefly lit as if for a celebration, then dimming again as fuel runs thin and order returns. Galaxies are kitchens of chemistry. The first stars were simple cooks, hydrogen and helium into the first heavier flavors. Later generations inherited their ashes and experimented further, building carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, sending them back into the pantry through winds and supernovae. Gas clouds took up these enriched ingredients and baked new stars, often with planets, often with materials that would become minerals and water, and the long patience of organic chemistry. From a distance you see a haze. Up close, you would find 1,000 quiet forges going about their work. We sometimes speak of galactic evolution, and the phrase can sound busy, as if every island were restless, always changing its shape. Change does happen. Bars can grow, arms can fade, gas can be spent, companions can tug and merge, but the timescales are long beyond our daily reach. A bar grows while whole lineages rise and pass on 1,000 worlds, 2 galaxies court for hundreds of millions of years before they share a single name. From our vantage, the cities of light seem steady, the very quality that makes them comforting objects for bedtime thoughts. They move, they age, they change, but almost always in a key so low it cradles rather than alarms. Birth, like much else in the cosmos, arrives softly, and then all at once, a cool cloud feels a nudge, perhaps a passing spiral wave, perhaps the pressure of nearby starlight, and collapses inward. In its depths, a denser kernel forms, gathers more, heats, then, almost shyly, crosses a threshold where nuclear fires begin. The newborn blows a small clearing in the cloud, peeks out, and joins the choir. Around some of these young suns, disks of dust and pebble-sized stone circle like patient potter's wheels. Amid collisions and gentle clumping, planets begin as unremarkable grains and end as worlds. All the while, the galaxy keeps turning, indifferent to haste, content to be a setting for a million stories at once. If it helps, picture each galaxy as a lantern carried down a river at night. Some lanterns travel in pairs, some in flotillas, some alone. The river itself is the web we walked last chapter, and at certain bends, lanterns gather into eddies, clusters, where the glow is dense. Further along, the water widens into slow lakes, void margins, where the lanterns thin. In the dark between, you can hear the larger river breathing, the current that comes from the expansion of space itself, lifting everything gently apart unless gravity has already tied a knot. Your room, meanwhile, offers its own galaxy analogies. The warm cluster of books by the bed, the spiral of a cord laid down and forgotten, the quiet halo of dust that glows in the lamp when you shift your blanket. Even the way neighborhoods in a city feel different at different hours mirrors the moods across a galaxy. The young quarters bright and quick, the older districts golden and at ease. Patterns recur because the rules of gathering and settling, of flow and rest, are generous with their forms. If words begin to blur at the edges, let them. Let the island of starlight you're holding in mind drift a little further away until it becomes a smudge, and the smudge becomes a softness, and the softness becomes a comfort. We have more to visit, our own address within one of these islands, the horizon that sets the limits of our view, but for now, the overview is enough. Galaxies are cities, yes, but they are also lullabies, their countless stars like notes in a chord that doesn't resolve so much as continue, gently, into the next breath. Close your eyes a little more. Imagine the faintest glow filtering through your eyelids, as if it had crossed the width of a galaxy to find you. It does not ask anything of you. It only keeps you company. Somewhere in that wide city of light, a new star is pressing into being. Somewhere else, an older one is cooling toward a quiet ember. Between them, distances no step can cover, and yet the thought crosses easily. Our next wander will narrow to our neighborhood, to the arm of our spiral, and the cluster that cradles it. For now, let the island's shoreline blur into night and drift. Begin, if you like, with something small and familiar. The circle of light your bedside lamp draws on the wall, a quiet moon of your own. Now let that circle widen until it takes the shape of our neighborhood in the sky. We live in a township of starlight, neither at the center of everything, nor at the edge of anything we can name, settled like a warm house on a long lane. Our address is precise and humble at once. We reside in the Milky Way, a broad spiral with a modest bar at its heart, 4 main arms, and several feathered spurs that braid between them. Our sun is a citizen of one such spur, the Orion Cygnus spur, an inter-arm lane that curves between larger thoroughfares called Sagittarius and Perseus. If the galaxy is a city seen from far above, we are on a pleasant side street, close enough to a main avenue to feel its glow, far enough to enjoy the quieter traffic of local stars. It is a good place for long afternoons and slow chemistry. Our star circles the galactic center once every 220-something million years, a long season called a cosmic year. We are about halfway from the center to the rim, some 27,000 light-years out, where the city thins but still shines. Around us, the disk's thin plane holds the great majority of stars, gas and dust, while above and below the disk, a thicker, dimmer halo carries ancient clusters, spherical swarms whose members are older than any map we draw. In that halo, unseen but strongly felt, An invisible mass extends the Milky Way's reach, the way bedrock extends beneath a town. Our local street has neighbours. On clear, dark nights from the southern hemisphere, the Magellanic clouds show as two misty smudges, small companion galaxies trailing us like friendly boats in a convoy. Through binoculars in both hemispheres, the Andromeda Galaxy reveals a pale thumbprint in autumn skies, the nearest large city of light, 2.5 million light-years away, and slowly, gently, on course to meet us in some far future dawn. We are not isolated. We live among cousins. Zoom wider to the local group. Our cluster of roughly a few dozen galaxies, most of them dwarfs modest as hamlets, with two principal metropolises, the Milky Way and Andromeda. Between these two, a quiet tug keeps time. Their halos are large, their orbits slow, and the space between them is not empty so much as lightly furnished, thin gas, drifting stars, the long tails from earlier interactions braided into the dark. The local group itself drifts within a broader tendril of the cosmic web, a stream of matter gently feeding and being fed by larger basins. Wider still, and we arrive in the Virgo supercluster, and beyond that, in a graceful basin of flow called Laniakea, immense heaven, a region hundreds of millions of light-years across, where galaxies stream along the contour lines of gravity toward shared valleys. Names are lanterns in the fog. They help us speak. What matters is the feeling we are part of a watershed, where a raindrop falls on one hillside determines which river it will join. And our galaxy is that raindrop, poised on a slope that leads through the Virgo cluster, and onward our motion guided by mass we see and mass we infer. And yet, for all this belonging, our most intimate address is smaller. It is the Sun and its planets. The Sun is not grand by galactic standards, neither the smallest ember nor the largest beacon, yet it is generous, steady, and patient with its light. Earth circles at a distance, where water can be shy and liquid both, where blue can be true. Our planet tilts. Seasons come and go. Clouds carry oceans inland and return them by way of rivers. Life rises, rests, and rises again. In the time it takes our galaxy to make a single turn, continents shuffle like chairs, mountains lift and lean back down, forests breathe in and out across ice ages. Scale is a teacher of tenderness. It asks us to hold many tempos at once. The Sun itself is on a smaller pilgrimage within the larger one. It bobs gently above and below the galactic plane every few tens of millions of years, like a shell-riding swell on a slow ocean. It passes near and far from spiral arms, whose star birth rates wax and wane. It shares space with drifting clusters that were once tighter families and are now loose acquaintances. Occasionally a star wanders within a light-year or two, reshaping the far edges of our comet reservoir with a courteous nudge. In this neighborhood, chance is soft-spoken. When we tell the story of our address in coordinates and numbers, sleep may hesitate, but address is also a mood. To live here is to be wrapped in a particular color of starlight, a warm gold whose photons left the Sun about 8 minutes ago and found your skin as if returning to their source. It is to be bathed in a thin rain of cosmic rays, mostly deflected by Earth's magnetic reach, to be shielded from supernova blasts by distances large enough to turn violence into a faint widening of light. It is to know that our nights are noisy, only with gentle things, crickets, wind, perhaps the quiet tick of a baseboard heater, and beyond that, a dark that is not empty but supportive, like felt beneath a ring. We might wonder, in a whisper, whether our position is special. The universe, so far as we can tell, does not keep a throne at its center. Any observer anywhere can draw a circle and call it home and watch galaxies recede uniformly with distance, because space itself is expanding and the view will be much the same in its large strokes. Our address is particular without being privileged. That can be a comfort. It releases us from the weight of centrality and offers instead the grace of locality. We are exactly where we are, and that is enough. A brief, gentle chronology drifts through our rooms. The sun formed in a cluster perhaps 5 billion years ago, a nursery where many siblings kindled in the same cloud. Over a few 100 million years, the cluster loosened as tides from the galaxy, and the push and pull of members sent stars their separate ways. Our solar family moved off, keeping only a chemical memory of its kin, ratios of elements in the sun's light, that could, if we had the patience, help us pick its siblings out of crowded skies. The earth cooled, seas gathered, simple lives tried the water and the light, and the long experiment of biology unfurled. Through all of this, the Milky Way turned, Andromeda approached in glacial courtesy, and the local group floated along its lane. There is beauty in the ordinariness of it. We sit in a spiral-armed side street. Our star keeps a reliable pace. The neighborhood is quiet enough for fragile things to persist. Had we formed too near the core, supernovas might have crowded us with harsh brilliance. Too far out, and we might have lacked the heavier elements that make rocks and bone and the red of late apples. We are not perfectly placed like a staged photograph, but the range of good enough is wide, and we are within it, a comfortable chair pulled up near the window of a house with many rooms. If your eyelids are heavy, let the tour soften into a feeling of belonging. Imagine the Milky Way arcing from horizon to horizon, a pale bridge across the summer night. Feel the quiet trait of our lane in that bridge, a little less crowded than the main avenues, a little more space between lights, a little more dark for stars to be precisely themselves. Think of a dress not as a number written on a door, but as the way a place holds you, how the weight of the blanket suggests gravity, how the color of the room suggests the sun's late angle, how the air itself whispers of a blue planet turning at a kind speed. Sooner or later, our neighborhood will change its look. Andromeda will draw near, tides will taffy the disks, streams of stars will arc across the sky like powdered sugar tossed in easy curves, cores will merge and rest, the city will become less spiral, more smooth. None of this hurries toward us. These are sketches on paper that curls only at the edges. The story we inhabit runs on a human scale, days, years, lifetimes, nested within a longer story we can feel but not finish. The long story is a lullaby played in a lower register. It does not demand, it reassures. For tonight, our address is simply this: a bed in a room in a home on a small world, a world warmed by a modest star, a star nestled in a spur between two arms of a spiral galaxy, the galaxy adrift in a small group, the group sliding along a filament into a vast basin with a beautiful name. The night outside your window is threaded to all of it. The same physics that holds your mug to the table keeps our planet in its lane. The same light that pulls on your wall once leapt from the sun and crossed the wide 8-minute river to arrive. Everything is continuous. Let your shoulders soften. Let the map fold itself back into your pocket. You know the way home. Our next wandering will consider horizons, the gentle fog at the edge of what we can see, why limits are not walls but weather. For now, stay with this feeling. Even in a universe without a center, we still have an address and it holds us kindly. Close your eyes a little more. The lane is quiet. The stars keep their watch, and you are home. Hold a lantern in fog and you'll notice something gentle. The world has a distance, Close things glow, far things fade, and beyond a certain reach there is only softness. The lantern is not being refused, it is simply being asked to accept a limit for the night. Our cosmos offers a similar kindness. We live inside an observable bubble, a lantern in ancient mist where light from within can reach us and light from beyond has not had time to arrive. Imagine the room of the universe as it began, small by comparison to now, hot, crowded, light trying to move but bouncing in place. As the room expanded and cooled, light slipped free and started out. Every photon that finds you tonight has travelled through that growing room, threading lanes that have stretched as it went. The space between landmarks is not a fixed hallway, it's a walkway on rollers that slowly, patiently lengthen. This makes our bubble less like a rigid sphere and more like a boundary set by time and texture, what has had the chance to reach us given the way the room has opened. When we say 13.8 billion years, we might be tempted to picture a radius of 13.8 billion light years. The bubble should be that big, yes, a year for a light year. But as the light came toward us, the room kept unfurling, distances grew. So the galaxies that sent the first photons we can see may now be far beyond 13.8 billion light years away. Our lantern reaches them as they once were. Their present positions drift further off, like ships moving on a slow tide long after their bells were heard at the harbour. From our place at the dock, the sound still arrives. The ship, meanwhile, has gone on. There are a few kinds of edge we can speak of, though none is a wall. One is the particle horizon, the farthest distance from which light has had time to reach us, since light could travel freely. Another is the Hubble radius, closer in, the distance at which the general recession from expansion matches the speed of light. A third, more whispery still, is the event horizon of a universe with accelerated expansion, a boundary beyond which events will never be able to send us news, no matter how long we wait. These are not fences, they are fog lines painted by time and by the room's changing pace. The Hubble radius is the most intuitive to feel. If space itself is stretching, then on large scales galaxies separate the way dots on a balloon surface drift apart as you breathe into it. Nearby dots barely move relative to each other. Very distant dots recede faster, not because they break rules, but because there is more balloon between them to stretch. At a certain distance, the recession speed, this gentle pulling apart due to expansion, matches light's own swift pace. Light released beyond that shifting line begins with a headwind stronger than its sprint, yet the story is kinder than it sounds. As epochs change, the line moves, what begins beyond can drift inward and one day appear. A fog line is not a prohibition, it is a description of now that may differ from later. The particle horizon is a record of receipt. It marks the farthest places whose photons, sent long ago, have made it into our room. We know them by their light, not by direct contact. The cosmic microwave background is the most ancient of these messages, a sphere around us in every direction, not because we are the center of the universe, but because we are at the center of our own arrivals. Every observer anywhere would be likewise centered in their sphere of seen light. The bubble is personal and universal at once. The event horizon, if our cosmos continues to speed its expansion as it seems to be doing, is the softest of the trio, more poem than post. It defines a future limit to news. There will be distant places whose light launched after a certain time will never catch up to us. They are not leaving because of any decision. The tide of the room carries all shores outward. In the very long view, this suggests a quieting of the far background. Near things, our local group, our knitted companions, remain held by gravity's rooms. Far things, unbound, thin into a dark beyond that is not hostile, only shy. If these boundaries feel disquieting, we can soften them. A horizon isn't a loss, it's a way to rest. When you stand on the beach, there is no grief in the fact that you cannot see over Earth's curve. The line comforts the eyes. In the same way, cosmological horizons offer the gentle courtesy of a finite view. They turn the immeasurable into the companionable. Within the bubble, we can learn deeply and carefully. Beyond it, we can imagine with humility. Let's wander the bubble with our senses. Close your eyes and picture a sphere drawn not in chalk, but in time. The inner layers are recent, a nearby galaxy whose light set out when our grandparents walked beneath street lamps, a supernova whose flash began around the time ink dried on a book you love. Further out are older postcards, light that left when mammals first became curious, when continents wore different coastlines, when the first trees exchanged quiet with the wind. Deeper still, whole patterns of galaxies mapped in faint constellations of redshift, each dot a lantern that left before Earth existed. At the far interior surface sits that ceiling of ancient light, our Chapter 1 companion, carrying the earliest image we can receive directly, turned now to a hushed microwave tone by the stretch of space. Between us and those layers, light does work. It passes through webs of gas, sometimes gaining a tiny warmth from clusters, the way breath fogs a window, sometimes finding its wavelength nudged by gravity's wells, sometimes braided by lensing so that one galaxy becomes an arc and 5 become one in a mirror's trick. Each effect is a note on the envelope, routed through the filaments, stamped by the clusters, forwarded by the expansion's slow machinery. Our instruments read the postmarks, and from them we reconstruct a journey with care and caveats, knowing the route is not a straight hall but a living room. We often use the balloon image to speak of all this. Imagine ink dots on the surface of a balloon as it inflates. Each dot sees all others recede more quickly the farther away they are. There is no dot at the center of the expansion, because the expansion is of the surface itself. The analogy is not perfect. Our space is 3-dimensional, and the balloon's surface is too, but it lets the heart understand that the center is everywhere, the edges are nowhere, and the speed at which things separate is written into the fabric rather than into the motion of the dots atop it. You are not being carried away from other galaxies by a wind. The air between you and them is being woven longer. Another helpful picture. Fog. In fog, sound carries differently. Close footsteps are clear. A far bell becomes a softened chime. You cannot walk to the edge of fog. It thins, it thickens, it changes with currents you do not control. Cosmological horizons share that character. They are properties of the medium space-time rather than fixed walls. And just as fog invites a quieter kind of attention, horizons invite humility. We are learners in a room with a soft perimeter. Time itself is braided into these ideas. When we look far, we look back the light left earlier, and we meet places in their younger days. The nearest galaxy shows us last night. The farthest galaxies we can see directly show us cosmic dawn, when stars first struck their matches in a universe still finding its clarity. That means our bubble is also a memory sphere. We do not see the present day of distant shores. We see their old photographs arriving on a patient tide. This is not a flaw in the view. It is the view. The night sky is a museum with exhibits arranged by the time their light departed. Perhaps you feel a tug to know what lies beyond the bubble. Curiosity is welcome. We can infer carefully that beyond the horizon, the universe likely continues in its broad character. The smoothness we see on large scales here would by continuity be the smoothness there. The web we map should be part of a larger web. but inference is a gentle thing, held loosely. We acknowledge that our beyond is for now a kind of darkness filled with probability rather than pictures. Strangely, that can be restful. It means there is always more room for wonder than there is for finality. There is also a local grace in limits. Within our bubble, we find enough richness to last many lives of looking dwarf galaxies with tidy star nurseries, spirals with flocculent arms, ellipticals glowing like embers, clusters padding the dark with whispers of hot gas. Closer to home, planets hold weather and geology for us to read like diaries. Moons keep secrets in ice. Comets carry ancient dust that paints a line across dawn. The boundary of sight does not fence us in. It frames the view so the mind can soften into it. If the thought of an event horizon, news that will never arrive, feels like a closing door, remember that our nearest companionship is secure. Gravity's rooms keep what they have truly gathered. The local group will remain a family, even as distant cousins fade. Within that family, new stories unfold on scales we can touch with instruments and mathematics and patient attention. The eternal quieting of far beacons is not a crisis. It is the universe's way of dimming the lights in the corridor while we settle by the fire. And there is a more intimate horizon you can feel without any telescope. When you lie back and close your eyes, there is a boundary beyond which thoughts blur, the day recedes. The mind's lantern finds only fog, that too is an observable bubble. What consciousness can hold in this moment? Beyond it, nothing is wrong. Beyond it, rest waits. You don't need to expand your mental universe tonight. You can let the edge come close. You can dwell inside a smaller sphere, and you can be perfectly complete within it. A short chronology, then, as a lullaby. The universe brightened and cooled. Light went free. Over billions of years, that light crossed an enlarging room. Some of it, after long travels through a web of gathering, arrived here. We learned to listen to it with dishes and mirrors and detectors that taste temperature differences smaller than the warmth of a hand on a teacup. We drew maps. We described horizons, particle, Hubble, event, not to dramatize edges, but to honor the tempo of receipt. We learned that limits are not failures, they are the shape of our knowing. Let the idea become a feeling. You are in a bubble, yes, but the bubble is generous. It includes your breath, your home, your city's dim halo on low clouds, your planet's blue hush, your star's steady note, your galaxy's broad bridge across the night, and all the lanterns whose light has arrived with patient grace. The fog beyond is not erasure, it is simply time still travelling. If sleep is near, let it come like distance fading into mist. If you remain, rest in the thought that tomorrow's instruments will widen the sphere a little, not by pushing a wall, but by letting more light find us. For now the view is enough. You are a lantern in fog. Your circle of world is kind and complete. The horizon holds steady without asking anything of you. Close your eyes a little more. The bubble hums with ancient light. Somewhere far off, a galaxy continues to send its quiet postcard. It will arrive when it arrives. Meanwhile, the room gathers around you, and the night leans toward rest. There is a way the day loosens itself from your shoulders in the evening, as if time were a shawl drawn down to the elbows. The room takes on a slower color. Voices soften. In that dimming you can feel the arrow of time, not a sharp dart, more a ribbon unspooling, a current moving gently one way. We live within that current. Everything we know seems to lean along it. Eggs don't unscramble. Smoke doesn't gather back into logs. Footsteps make prints and not predictions. The universe too has this preference. a soft tilt toward the later. Physicists speak of entropy when they trace this tilt, the measure of how many ways the pieces of a system can arrange themselves while still looking, from across the room, much the same. A tidy desk has few acceptable arrangements. A pile of papers has many, left alone. The desk tends toward the pile, not from mischief but from mathematics. There are simply more ways to be messy. The early universe, hot and smooth, and astonishingly simple, had very few arrangements available to it. As it cooled and expanded, new rooms opened, more ways for energy to distribute, more places for warmth to wander, and the arrow lengthened, not like a command, but like a suggestion built into the numbers. If that sounds abstract, let's hold it in the hand. A mug of tea cools on a nightstand. Heat slips from a small, concentrated place into the wider room. Molecules that were lively become less so. The air that received them grows only slightly more lively, and you never notice. This is the arrow made local, a shared outness that increases without fuss. When we say time moves forward, we are often pointing to this hush of mixing, the way tidy energies choose company over solitude. And yet, at the smallest scales, the rules allow dances that look the same when played backward, collisions of particles that could just as well be run in reverse and still make sense. The arrow does not appear in any single step. It appears in the gathering of steps, the choreography of many moving parts. Perhaps that is why the arrow feels so human. We experience time not as a single instant, but as a braid of moments, memory interlaced with sensation, expectation tucked in like a note. The forwardness we feel is the stacking of cards, not the printing of one. To measure this gentle river, the universe has given us clocks. Some are stellar, the lives of stars running from blue-white youth to red ember age, a chronology written in color. Some are rough, the rate at which unstable atoms whisper their way into different elements, step by probabilistic step. Some are precise beyond intuition, the buzz of electrons in cesium, each tick so reliable that our seconds are now defined by it. We built pendulums and quartz, and then learned to listen to atoms, and the listening revealed that even time is not quite the same everywhere. Down deep in gravity's rooms, clocks run a fraction slow, up on mountaintops, a fraction fast. The world's floorboards sag just enough that time pulls in the low places and thins a little over hills. Above us, pulsars keep a stricter beat than any metronome. Collapsed stars spinning with the stubborn memory of their birth, sweeping beams across space like lighthouse keepers with a fondness for punctuality. Whole networks of these sky clocks have become the universe's long-range timekeepers, marking out years with the steadiness of distant drums. We use their rhythm to test whether the room ripples, to watch for tremors we cannot otherwise feel. Time, in this sense, is both the beat and the hearing of it, tick and ear, pulse and palm. On Earth, our bodies listen to a different clock, light and dark braided into the day. Inside us, cells keep a near 24-hour rhythm, a choreography of hormones and temperature, wakefulness and rest. Morning light tips the balance toward alert. Evening darkness tilts us to softness. Meals, movement, and habit tune the mechanism. To be out of time on a weary day often means only this, that our inner pendulum has lost track of the sun. It can be coaxed back gently with regular light and quiet routines, the way a kindly hand sets a grandfather clock to the right hour and closes its glass door. There is another kind of time that lives behind the forehead. Felt time an afternoon can stretch. A summer can vanish. Waiting for news dilates a minute until it holds a dozen thoughts. Talking with an old friend makes an hour small enough to slip into a pocket. The physicist's seconds keep their pace, but the mind braids them into tapestries of uneven weave, some dense, some loose, all true to their experience. This elasticity is tenderness. It means time can meet you where you are, can thicken to hold you, can thin to release you, without changing its underlying drum. In the story of the cosmos, the arrow has lent us a light chronology. First, a hot simplicity, smooth as soup, then cooling, and the release of light, then gathering, and the first stars turning on. Galaxies matured, chemistry grew elaborate, planets found orbits and kept them, seas learned the language of tides, and on at least one world a thin film of living cells discovered how to convert sunlight into sugar, and sugar into motion, and motion into curiosity. Each step broadened the room of possibilities. Entropy rose, yes, but so did variety, intricacy, the number of songs that could be sung. The arrow does not point to decay alone, it points to unfolding, to the plus one of things. In our own days we feel this unfolding as seasons. Spring is not the world winding up and autumn winding down so much as the curve of light across a tilt, the planet's posture changing its share of day and night, leaves green, then copper. The air trades scents. Daylight takes different angles across the kitchen table. None of it reverses in exactly the same way it came. Each year is a new garment tailored from the same cloth. This, too, is the arrow cycles that return without repeating, circles that are actually spirals when you step back enough. There is a soft fear sometimes when we speak of entropy, that it means endings. But endings in nature are scaffolds for continuance. A star's final generosity seeds a nebula. A fallen tree feeds a stand of saplings. A sunset gives the night permission to begin. On the far scale, cosmologists sketch futures where star formation slows, where galaxies grow quiet, where the universe cools into a long dusk. Even there, the tone need not be stern. That dusk would be spacious and unhurried, a room lit by long cooling embers, and we live now in a bright interval crowded with detail, with enough change to keep us curious and enough stability to keep us safe. You might hold the arrow tonight as a kindness. It carries you gently away from what stung at noon and toward a place where sleep can gather. It tells you that unfinished isn't failure. It's the natural state of a world always mid-arrangement. It gives you permission to set some things down, because time will not ask you to pick them up in reverse. The desk can be tidied tomorrow. The tea can be reheated or made anew. The conversation you wished had gone differently can inform a better one at a later hour. Arrows point, but they also point past. They guide the eyes forward to a softer horizon. If you want, picture a star clock above your bed, not a ticking face, but a wide, slow wheel. Along its rim are the markers of long time. The first clouds, the first stars, the first heavy elements, the first worlds cool enough to keep oceans. Somewhere halfway around, a small marker for this evening, a lamp, a room, the steady hush of a neighborhood. Let the hand move imperceptibly. Nothing is being taken from you. Things are being woven together and allowed to settle. A last gentle thought. Some arrows are chosen. We decide to let certain habits drift downstream and others to be carried gently upstream by effort and care. Sleep is one such chosen arrow. We turn off the lights. We lower our voices. We set the phone down a little farther from reach. And we invite the mind to move in the direction it already wants to go. All of this is cooperation with time's soft river, not resistance to it. You do not have to push. You only have to stop paddling. Let your eyelids fall a little more. The mug cools by your side. Heat shares itself with the room. Somewhere beyond the ceiling, A pulsar sweeps its beam with calm tenacity. Somewhere nearer, a clock on a mountain ticks a hair faster than its brother by the sea. Here your own pulse keeps the truest time of all for this moment, not in numbers, but in feel. The arrow is not a spear, it is a ribbon that curls into the warmth of the covers, tucks itself in, and rests. We will listen next for messages carried by light and ripple, the ways the universe speaks without touching. For now, trust the forward hush. The night leans the way all things lean softly into tomorrow, and you, carried by the same current, can let go. Every color of light is a note, and each note carries a clue. Pass a star's beam through a prism, and it stretches into a ribbon, red through blue and beyond what eyes can hold. Along the ribbon, dark threads interrupt, slender absences like letters missing from an ancient script. Those are spectral lines, fingerprints of elements in the star's atmosphere. Hydrogen leaves one pattern, helium another, sodium another still. By reading these missing letters, we learn what a star is made of, how hot its surface might be, how fast it spins, even whether a breeze is flowing outward from its skin. We're reading by the holes in the text, and somehow the story becomes clearer. If you've ever held an old letter and felt, before even reading, the quiet of the sender's hand, you already know something about astronomy. The universe sends letters. They travel without envelopes, crossing rooms of space in straight intentions that slowly bend. They arrive as light, thin and weightless, yet full of meaning, and when we open them with prisms and mirrors and careful instruments, words appear where there seem to be only glow. Light shifts as it travels. If a star is moving toward us, its lines slide fractionally bluer. If away, fractionally redder. The same is true when the room itself expands. Distant galaxies are carried from us on the tide of space, and their light becomes redder, not because they are fleeing through air, but because the air between has lengthened, coaxing each crest of the wave a little farther from the next. This is redshift, a soft drift of color that becomes a measure of distance, an odometer for the lanterns on the dark river. We compile their shifts the way a mail sorter checks postmarks, stacking envelopes by how long they've been traveling. There are deeper notes than light. When very heavy objects, black holes, neutron stars, spiral together, they do not merely glow. They ring the room, space-time ripples, and the ripples travel outward like the bass line of a distant song. We built quiet halls of vacuum and mirrors to hear them, and the first time they arrived, they said two black holes met, far away and long ago, and their embrace shook the fabric. Since then we've begun to hear other meetings, other dances. These messages carry no colors, only shapes in time. The wave swells and quickens, like footsteps approaching, then fades into a hush. From that shape, we learn the masses, the distance, the history of the meeting. The room, which we once thought silent, has been humming along. In those stacked messages, temperature whispers as well. Blue stars speak of youth and heat, quick burning and bright. Redder stars hum of age and ease, their fires gentler, their lives longer. A galaxy whose ribbon skews blue is one where nurseries are busy. One that leans amber is a city of elders, settled and warm. Between them a spectrum of moods, starbursts like fireworks seen through fog, quiescent discs like libraries, lit after hours. It is astonishing, in a soft, ordinary way, how much can be learned from a line of colors and a few interruptions. Sometimes light speaks in time rather than tone. A star dims with regular precision, and we notice a planet has passed in front, a little shadow repeating with a loyal period. From the dip's depth and shape, we infer the planet's size, the tilt of its path, even hints of its air if we listen hard enough when starlight filters through it. On other nights, a star flares irregularly, and we suspect magnetic tempests, or it fades and does not return, a supernova's postcard written in sudden brightness, and then sent into dark. All these languages, color, time, ripples, ghostly particles, add up to a conversation with things we will never touch. We become skilled readers at a distance. The more we read, the more the world feels intimate, not because it is smaller, but because it is legible. We learn to separate the handwriting of a galaxy's swirl from the signature of dust in the way. We untangle the accent of a planet's atmosphere from the dialect of its parent star. We measure, compare, hesitate, correct. Science might look like certainty from across the street. Up close it is a careful curiosity, a willingness to annotate and revise. There are messengers shyer still. Neutrinos, tiny, near-weightless particles, slip through matter like moonlight through lace. When a massive star collapses and flares, a storm of neutrinos leaves the core before light can fight its way out. A handful reach Earth, and, once in a great while, nick an atom in vast underground pools we've prepared for the purpose. The pool flashes, a single blue sigh, and we mark the arrival. It is the ghost of an event crossing our path, a postscript from the heart of a star, sent in the language of almost not there. Years ago, such a whisper warned us in advance that a supernova's light was on its way. It was like hearing a gentle knock before the doorbell rang. The messages arrive late, but late is still truthful. When you open a letter from a friend written last year, you do not doubt the friendship, because the ink has dried. You take the words as they were intended then, and they enrich your now. Likewise, a galaxy's light is not lying when it shows us its younger face. It is simply telling us a story in the order the universe allows. There is a graciousness in accepting that sequence, in letting now be local and then be everywhere else. The night sky becomes a library in which nothing is shelved by geography and everything by time departed. On Earth, we have our own versions of spectral reading. The sea's color tells of depth and plankton. The smell of rain tells of dry soil waiting to drink. The ring of a cup tells whether it is empty or holds water. We are readers by nature. Perhaps that is why starlight feels companionable rather than alien. It offers patterns in a language we were already prepared to learn. The first prism you ever saw, maybe in a classroom window or a chandelier, began your training. The rainbow was the alphabet. We might imagine gently what we have not yet learned to hear, perhaps a whisper in the polarization of old light that sharpens our view of the first moments, perhaps new kinds of detectors, deep and cold, that sense particles. We've only sketched, perhaps better ears, for the low rumble of the universe's longest waves, the ones that move not in seconds, but with the patience of years. Each edition will be less a shout than a better chair, a better lamp, a quieter room in which the same music can be appreciated more fully. There is a chronology in this correspondence, soft and enormous. First, the afterglow. That patient background letter we met in our opening chapters, addressed to everyone, printed in a low, even tone. Then, as stars and galaxies formed, the messages grew varied, a star's spectrum like a personal note, a quasar's radiance like a billboard seen from counties away, a supernova's light curve like a fever chart kept by a careful nurse. More recently still, gravitational waves have joined, adding the bass under the melody, and neutrinos the rare footnote that clarifies the plot. The longer we listen, the more instruments we add to the orchestra, if sleep is near. Imagine the sky as a postal bag set gently on the doorstep of night. Inside are envelopes of different weights, some inked in blue, some on heavy ivory paper that smells faintly of distance. You do not need to open them all. You could choose one. The spectrum of a nearby star, its hydrogen lines thin and graceful. Or choose another, a gravitational wave signal, a curve that swells then fades, the audio of two dark bodies making one. Or choose none, letting the knowledge that messages exist be enough to keep you company as you drift. If this sounds grand, bring it close. The lamp beside you is writing spectra onto the objects it touches, warm tones on wood, cooler tones on fabric. Your eyes, evolved spectroscopists, distinguish those tones and assemble a room. When you step outside tomorrow and look at the sky, the blue is rarely scattering, daylight spoken into finer grains. At sunset, the red is a longer path through the air, the short wavelengths sipped away, the long ones arriving like slow wine. You are already fluent. There is comfort in the constancy of these messages. Stars do not compose with malice. Galaxies do not gossip. Black holes do not boast. The news they send is simply what happens when mass and light and time share a room, when the day's human words have tangled emails, headlines, the quick exchange that didn't land right. It can help to remember that another kind of mail is always arriving, neutral, patient, true to its source. It asks nothing of you. It can be received with the eyes closed. Tomorrow, when it comes, and only when it comes, we'll consider where these messages suggest we are headed. Not in a rush, but in sketches and maybes. Tonight we can rest in the assurance that the universe is communicative by nature, that even vast distances can be bridged by patient carriers. The room darkens. The last light from your lamp touches the spine of a book and fades. Above the ceiling, photons continue their long crossing, not in a hurry, not concerned with arrival tables. Some of them began before Earth had oceans, and still they come, as if the night itself were a faithful post. Close your eyes a little more. Let the letters sort themselves. Somewhere inside the quiet, a star writes your name in sodium and hydrogen, not because it knows you, but because physics is poetry when read slowly. You are part of the audience the universe imagined when it learned how to shine. Let the message, just this one, be rest. Picture a shoreline at dawn, the tide doing its unhurried work. It is not that each shell on the sand decides to crawl away from its neighbors. Rather, the whole sea draws a longer breath, and everything upon it rides the change. Cosmic expansion is like that, an ambient swelling of the room itself. Galaxies are the shells. Space is the water between. Nothing tries to separate. Separation happens because the medium is gently lengthening. If we wanted to, we could talk in the language of symbols, scale factors and parameters with careful hats and dots above them, a grammar that has served us well. But it is just as true, and perhaps kinder for bedtime, to say that the universe keeps remeasuring itself with a slightly larger ruler. Distances are not fixed rods laid between cities of light. They are elastic, soft tape that the cosmos lets out a little more with every tick of the shared clock. The wonder is not that far galaxies grow farther. The wonder is that local rooms, galaxies, clusters, ignore the lengthening tape and hold their shapes as if tethered by their own slow music. Stand in imagination on a grid drawn across the night, a faint lattice whose squares expand like warming dough. Dots on the grid are galaxies. The dough rises evenly, not from a center, not toward an edge, just everywhere at once. Each dot sees all others ease away. The farther the dot, the more dough between. The more dough, the more lengthening. The more lengthening, the quicker the drift. A simple proportion emerges, the kind that makes the heart nod. Distance begets speed. It is not rebellion, it is recipe. We found this recipe by reading Color, Distant Galaxies send us their light tilted to the red, a soft stretching that says, "The room has grown while I travelled." When we gather many such measurements, a pattern appears so reliable that it becomes a measure of time itself, a way to guess how long the dough has been rising and how vigorously it rises now. The exact vigor changes with age. In youth, gravity's collective hand slowed the stretch. In our era, a newer, quieter influence, dark energy, seems to lean the other way. Not a shove, but a steady encouragement to keep lengthening. Whether dark energy is a property of the fabric itself, or a deeper mood we have not named, we feel it in the pace of separation, the way one feels a river's current without seeing every drop. Expansion is not a wind that can be hidden behind a wall. It is the wall's own decision to widen. And yet your room does not swell with the universe. Your cup does not thicken its porcelain. Your breath does not expand the space between ribs, because the atoms holding these things together are far more insistent than the cosmic suggestion. On small scales, electromagnetic bonds and chemical affinities dominate. On larger scales, gravity composes its own counter-melody, gathering matter into structures that forget the background tempo. Only when we step out to grander vistas does the orchestra thin and the underlying rhythm of expansion come through, like a bass you notice only after someone turns down the treble. In bedtime terms, think of two kinds of timekeeping in one room. A grandfather clock ticks for the house. Steady, inevitable. Someone hums a lullaby in the corner. Personal, immediate, both are true at once. Expansion is the clock, gravity and chemistry are the lullabies we follow more closely in our daily living. The beauty of the cosmos is the way these two keepers coexist, neither defeating the other, each granting a domain, clocks for halls, humming for bedsides. There is, tucked inside this quiet mathematics, a humility about beginnings. If the dough is rising now and has been, one might ask what the dough was like at the very start. Warmer, denser, closer, everywhere. Explanations speak of a hot, bright era where light could not travel freely, a time before the transparency that gave us the ancient afterglow, a ceiling of warmed memory we visited when the night was younger. Some stories add an even earlier rush, inflation, a brief and astonishing sprint that smoothed the batter to near uniformity, sprinkled with the tiniest deviations, the freckles that became filaments, clusters, voids. Inflation is still a perhaps, a good fit to the data with room for revision, but its mood suits the vision, a rapid smoothing, then a long, slow rise. We can also turn the question around and ask not of beginnings but of projects still underway. The grid widens, the dots ease apart. How does light cross such growing squares? It manages by patience. Each wave crest leaves the source with a certain spacing, and as the square that contains it stretches, the spacing lengthens too. Redshift is not the light becoming tired, it is the room choosing a longer stride. When that light arrives, on a plate in a quiet observatory, in a sensor cooled to near absolute hush, we read not only who sent it, but how the room changed en route. It is like reading the wrinkles in a letter's paper to learn how far it has travelled in a pocket. If the picture threatens to sharpen into worry, will everything be pulled away from everything else? You can soften it with the thought of home rivers. Some rivers run to sea. Some spread into deltas that become over time still lakes. Some disappear into sand and re-emerge later under different names. The universe's expansion is one such river, and gravity writes ponds and eddies into it, local holdfasts where lanterns circle and do not drift downstream. Our local group is such a pond. Its galaxies have enough shared mass to keep one another, Even as the far shore moves away, you live in a harbour. There are practical whispers hiding in the poetry. The rate of expansion is not just mood music. It is a ruler that lets us estimate the size of our observable bubble and the age of the shared room. Tension lives in the details, the way two careful methods can sing the same melody in slightly different keys. Scientists carry that tension kindly, as one carries a sleeping child across a threshold, careful not to wake it with a sudden turn. Maybe the tempo varies with time. Maybe our ladders of standard candles need another rung polished. Maybe both. The willingness to be corrected is part of the quiet mathematics. It keeps the room honest. In daily life, you already know this math by other names. Bread rises on the counter. The pattern on your sweater seems to grow as it stretches, though the threads themselves do not lengthen between stitches. A map app zooms out, and the icons separate without walking. Even the way dusk lengthens shadows without the lampposts moving is a kind of expansion, a geometry changing while the fixtures hold their ground. Your eyes are practiced. Cosmic expansion only asks you to use the same instincts on a stage too large to visit with shoes. A short human-sized chronology can be tucked into these large thoughts without strain. Once everything close. Then expansion and cooling. Transparency arrived. Light began its journey. Gravity gathered, and within its gatherings, new lights were born. In the spaces between, the dough kept rising. Now some regions bound, some drifting. The whole fabric stretching with a grace that reveals itself only in comparisons across great spans. In tomorrow's, the stretch is likely to quicken under dark energy's encouragement. We will still have our harbours. We will still have rooms where the humming dominates the ticking. What if, in the long future, someone looks up from a world within a bound island of stars, in a sky emptied of distant lanterns? Their view, framed by local constellations, might suggest a smaller cosmos than ours. Our letters from far-off cities will have stopped arriving by then, not out of disregard, but because the mail route itself has outpaced the couriers. Those future astronomers, if any are keeping watch, will be no less true in their conclusions for having fewer stamps to sort. Truths are local and layered. Tonight's truth is this room, this breath, this gentle explanation that you can hold without gripping. The mathematics of expansion can be felt not only in the sky, but in the mind's posture. Let thoughts be galaxies and attention, the fabric between when you soften. When you give yourself a little more room, each thought finds a kinder distance. The busy cluster of worries unknots into single lights, spread far enough that you can see them as points rather than a glare. In that spacing, they lose urgency. You do not banish them, you widen. Space, it turns out, is therapeutic. Before we close our eyes, a tender metaphor. Imagine the quilt on your bed is the universe. The patches are galaxies, stitched to neighbors by shared seams, heavy in places with old threads. Over years the fabric relaxes. A good quilt does. The patches do not rip from one another. The batting shifts, the weave settles, the whole softens, the warmth becomes more even. You tuck the edge under your chin and feel protected by something that breathes. Expansion is not a tearing, it is a loosening into comfort, a gradual release of tightness across the largest possible room. If numbers help, you can include a few in a whisper, the rate at which far lanterns drift scales with distance. The time since the first transparency is on the order of tens of billions of years. The change in that rate over time hints at an energy that neither crowds nor thins, but simply is. If numbers hinder, let them go. Keep only the sensations, dough rising, grids relaxing, rivers with eddies, quilts that ease. Somewhere beyond your roofline, telescopes do their patient work, measuring the red of star cities with the kind of attention a baker gives to yeast. Somewhere in a notebook, a student writes a single equation and understands, perhaps for the first time, that there is no center to the rising, no privileged square on the grid. Somewhere you once stood under a big sky and felt a hugeness that strangely did not make you small. Expansion has always been about that paradox. The bigger the room, the more space there is for a small light to be exactly itself. Close your eyes a little more. The tide turns on the dark shore. The shells do not scuttle. The water simply breathes and carries them. The universe breathes like that, so slowly that only the cumulative centuries reveal the motion. You are safe on your small piece of sand. The mathematics is quiet. The night is kind. The room, if it lengthens at all while you sleep, will only make more space for rest. Hold a paper globe in your hands and trace a finger along a great circle. You never reach a corner. Turn it over, and the path is still the same, continuous, smooth, returning to itself. Now fold a sheet of paper into a cone and pace a fingertip around the base. There's a new angle where edges meet, a gentle point at the tip where the world narrows. Geometry is not only lines and numbers, it is the mood of a room, the way paths behave, the way neighbors meet, the way light prefers to travel. Tonight we wonder, softly, about the shape of the cosmic room itself. If space were perfectly flat, like an endless tabletop, the rules would be familiar. Parallel lines keep their polite distance. Triangles add up their angles to a neat 180 degrees, and light, barring gravity's local suggestions, moves in straight insistence. Flatness is not smallness. A table can be as wide as imagination, but the room could also lean a little. With positive curvature, like the surface of a globe, straightest possible paths that begin side by side may eventually meet, not because they choose to, but because the room brings them together. With negative curvature, saddle-shaped, the opposite happens. Paths that start aligned gently diverge, as if the room were helping them keep a comfortable space. These are not metaphors only. They are the rules by which distances add, angles greet one another, and maps behave. Our senses, inherited from hills and kitchen floors, favor flat on human scales. Earth itself feels level, even though it bends underfoot with a radius so large we rarely sense it. The universe extends that sensation. In all the ways we can measure, large triangles of space seem to keep the flat book sum. Light crossing great distances does not betray a global bulge or dip. If there is curvature, it is slight. So slight that to feel it would require a triangle made of galaxies, a protractor the size of a supercluster, and patience longer than history. Flatness, in this gentle way, is a comfort. It means our maps, when drawn carefully, do not warp the room wildly at the edges. Yet geometry, like all good rooms, has an inner life. Even a flat space can be wrapped on itself. Like the classic video game screens, where a figure strolling off the right edge returns from the left. No magic required, only topology, the way a surface is connected to itself. You can imagine living in such a room and not knowing it for a long time. Walk in a straight line and eventually arrive back where you started, claiming you never turned. Look out and see your own galaxy repeated in the distance, faint and delayed by time, a hall of mirrors written into the fabric. We have looked for those repetitions, the echoes a wrapped room might make, and so far the sky suggests an openness wider than any loop we could traverse by light within the age of the universe. That does not forbid an artful topology. It only whispers that, if the room is folded, the folds are vast beyond our current reach. Curvature and topology are cousins. One describes how the room bends locally, the other how it is stitched globally. Together they determine the character of travel. On a sphere, every route is a circle, whether it feels like one or not, and the shortest paths, great circles, splice the world in halves. On a saddle, paths that begin parallel partways like friends who agree to write each other monthly and then drift to yearly and then kindly to whenever the mood takes us. In a flat, unwrapped space, a beam of light can cross forever and never repeat itself. In a wrapped, flat space, it can return like a letter sent into a friendly loop. None of these options is more poetic than the others. Each is a kind of hospitality. How would you feel the room's shape from inside the house? One way is to watch light. In a positively curved world, distant objects appear slightly larger than they would in a flat one. In a negatively curved room, slightly smaller, subtle distortions that require bright rulers and very careful eyes. Another way is to listen to the pattern of ancient light. The ceiling we met early in the night. The mottled freckles of that afterglow hold an imprint of the room's geometry when the universe was young and newly transparent. The size of the freckles on our sky, compared with the physics we trust from laboratory and star, suggests a near-flat canvas. The map is never the territory, and our instruments wear their own biases, but the harmony among methods, for now, hums the same note. If space has a bend, it is a long, slow bow, not a tight curl. Even in a nearly flat room, local mass sculpts local curves. A galaxy is a slight bowl, a cluster, a deeper basin, a black hole, a well so steep that even light cannot climb back once it crosses a certain rim. These structures, set in an almost flat meadow, give the cosmos its relief, hollows and swells, valleys and ridges that guide the streams of starlight we read. If you could run a palm across the universe, the way you palm a quilt, you'd feel the stitches of clusters, the soft dimples of halos, the occasional sharp pinprick of a collapsed star's event horizon, all laid upon a broad bed that to the touch is remarkably level. There is a gentle interplay here with the expansion we just explored, the scale factor, the measure of how the room's yardstick stretches with time, talks to curvature in the equations that sleep beneath the narrative. Curvature, if it is there, dilutes as the room grows, the way the arc over a short bridge feels gentler when you imagine the same arc spread across a longer span. In that sense, expansion is a flattening influence. Even a room that began with a noticeable lean could, in enough time and growth, present itself as nearly straight over the distances we can survey. Inflation, that early sprint in some tellings, does this in an instant. It takes whatever wrinkles the newborn room might have had and smooths them like hands over linen, leaving only the faintest texture for later. We can carry the thought further into mood. Curvature is a hidden script in how the universe invites companionship. In a positively curved room, paths converge. Travelers who set out separately find each other again and again, as sailors on a spherical ocean do. In a negatively curved space, paths part and meetings require intention. In a flat or near-flat expanse, friendships are local, and the wider world recedes with polite persistence. None of these is lonely. Each offers a different rhythm of encounter. Our lived experience, nested within a galaxy where gravity gathers, is one of repeated meetings and familiar neighborhoods. Beyond that, expansion conducts a slower thinning of acquaintance. The geometry suits the story. There's a people's version of all this. Stand on a hill and watch two birds cross the sky. In the near field, their paths seem straight and parallel. Imagine instead that you are watching them from a high balloon over a spherical Earth. Give them long miles, and their longitudes will bring them together or apart. not because their wings chose differently, but because the world bent beneath them. Geometry is the stage manager of coincidence. When you run into an old friend in a far city, you can blame the map's psychology: streets that funnel pedestrians to the same corners, parks that invite rest at the same benches. On cosmic scales, the funnels are gravity's curves written atop the room's broader posture. Ask the room, softly, what it prefers at the edges. Does it end? The lines of our best stories say no. They say without boundary, a phrase that means not infinite by necessity, but without walls that force a stop. An unbounded space can still be finite in volume if it wraps cleverly, like the surface of the earth, which has no edges and yet contains a countable ocean and continent. If the universe is wrapped, the seams are too far or too subtle for us to find with the postcards of light we've received so far. If it is open, the openness is not a cliff, it is a continuing. The distinction matters to the equations and delights philosophers, but to the pillow it is all one kindness. There is room enough for rest. What of time in this shaped room? Time is not geometry's servant. They are partners that write the script together. In deep hollows of gravity, time runs a touch slower, like a river eddy lingering in a cove. On broad flats, it runs a shade faster, the current stronger midstream. The global shape, meanwhile, influences how the room ages, how the expansion reads its tempo, how light accumulates its red shift, how horizons draw their fog lines. When we say the universe is nearly flat, we are also saying it has chosen a kind of long comfort for itself, no dramatic global fold that turns paths inward suddenly, no sharp saddle that flings them apart too fast. The room ages with an even breath. You can feel an echo of curvature at home. A curved staircase changes how you ascend, leaning your body to the rail. A domed ceiling alters how voices meet, drawing them to a focus where whispers grow clear. A long corridor bends just enough that what is coming is hidden until it is near, softening the pace of approach. Architects play with this because geometry changes mood without words. The universe is an architect of the gentlest sort. Its curves are slow, its dome wide beyond our survey. We live in good acoustics where signals travel and can be understood, where sightlines are long enough for wonder, but not so long that everything loses intimacy. There are caveats that scientists say with care, and we can repeat as lullaby. Our inferences about curvature and topology rely on light that has had to cross the living room, past filaments, through clustered halls, across ages in which the furniture itself moved. We correct for these patiently, knowing the corrections themselves carry uncertainties. We compare different rulers, ancient light's freckles, the standard candles of supernovae, the standard rulers of sound waves frozen in the galaxy distribution. When rulers agree, our confidence softens into calm. When they differ, we do not raise our voices. We add another lamp, turn the instrument a degree, and try again. The shape of the room rewards patience. There is a tender, human-sized use for all this. When worry arrives at bedtime, it often does so with straight lines. If then, if not, then next, an unbending march. Geometry can be a balm. Imagine your thoughts taking the room's cue and bending toward one another in a gentle convergence, finding a common center, circling, becoming local again. Or picture them in negative curvature, granted space to drift apart until they no longer crowd the bed. Or simply choose flat, a quiet tabletop where you can set each thought down and let it stay put while you sleep. The room inside your head, like the room outside, can choose the shape that best invites rest. A soft chronology, to ease us into closing our eyes. Once the room was hot and crowded. It may have smoothed itself in a brief, astonishing breath, ironing its creases, setting a nearly flat stage. Light went free, carrying a memory of the geometry it crossed. Gravity stitched local basins and hills atop the wide bed. Today the stage remains level to exquisite precision, with local relief enough to make the play interesting. Tomorrow the same. Far tomorrows. Perhaps the relief will soften as star-making slows and structures settle. The bed grows flatter, the quilt's texture evens, not to erase variety, but to offer a quieter background against which small lights, yours included, can be perfectly themselves. Close your eyes a little more. The ceiling above you might be flat, or it might, by some slight craft of plaster, have a curve that makes the room feel kinder. Either way, it holds. The universe's ceiling is like that, and we are held beneath it. Paths come together or drift, not because anyone commands them, but because the room is built with a particular grace. You are part of that grace, a small traveller choosing a pillow as a destination. The geometry of rest is simple, curvature toward comfort, topology that loops you back to home. Let the shape of the room cradle you. If there is a last thought, let it be a circle that closes. We wondered what the room prefers. It prefers, it seems, to be welcoming. Triangles sum the way they should. Light travels far without losing itself. Once in a while, gravity whispers a local curve to keep things interesting. That is enough for the night. The rest can keep until morning. Think of a winter afternoon that never quite becomes night, light thinning to pearl, then holding there, untroubled as if the day had found a ledge and decided to rest. The far future of the universe may carry that feeling, a long, gentle easing of brightness, not a sudden dark. We can sketch it in soft pencil, knowing the page might change, but the lines we draw invite calm rather than urgency. The first strokes are nearby cosmic standards. Star formation, lively now in spiral arms and dwarf galaxies, is already past its peak. The universe was more industrious in its youth. Gas was thicker, clouds collided more often, nurseries were busy. Over billions of years ahead, that raw material will be spent or warmed or tucked into stars that prefer to sip rather than gulp. Newborns will still arrive, blue and quick in some neighborhoods, red and steady in others, but the nursery wing of the cosmic hospital will grow quieter, the way a city settles after a festival, lights going out room by room. Our own galaxy carries its future with neighborly grace. Andromeda, the pale smudge that keeps us company on clear autumn evenings, is drifting our way on a timescale so broad it feels like music heard through walls. In several billion years, the two cities will pass, stir and fold into one, streams of stars arcing like powdered sugar in the air. Then settling, the final shape is likely to be rounder, calmer, an elder city with fewer fresh districts and a warm amber core. If there are eyes then to watch the sky, they will see unfamiliar constellations, long ribbons of lights connecting what were once separate stories. Even so, local life, wherever it may be, will measure time as it always has, by day and night, by seasons, by whatever rhythms its home has taught it. As the great river of time widens, stars age according to their temperaments. The massive ones, those brief blue torchbearers, live fast and leave quickly, seeding space with heavy elements and softening into remnants. Neutron stars dense as memory, black holes quiet as wells, sun-like stars choose a longer path, swelling into red giants, exhaling shells of gas that drift away like silk scarves in a draught, then cooling into white dwarfs, dim, patient coals that will glow for trillions of years. The smallest stars, the red dwarfs, are the thriftiest of all. They sip their fuel so carefully that the universe may grow old around them, while they are still murmuring in corner cafes of galaxies, lanterns that refuse to go out. Between these lives, planets will keep their slow intrigues. Some will be swallowed when their stars swell, some will drift outward on changing tides, some will be nudged from long-held orbits into eccentric rambles by passing companions. Moons may slip free and become small worlds. Comets will still write cursive across outskirts where there is room for long ellipses. The pace of these changes is lullaby slow. On a warm world, if such a world persists, a child might learn the names of 2 or 3 new lights in a lifetime, added by chance alignments and gentle drifts, and think the sky simply generous. Further out on the calendar, pages so thin you can see light through them, galaxies that are not bound together will continue to recede. Expansion, which once merely lengthened the room, seems to be accelerating, as if the fabric had discovered a preference for more space. The details of that acceleration belong to a quiet mystery we call dark energy, a placeholder phrase for something we sense by its effect more than by its face. If it carries on as it appears to now, distant clusters will drift beyond our event horizon, their light unable to bridge the stretching distance. This is not banishment. It is more like fog thickening between hills. Local valleys remain close. Far ridge lines fade to suggestion and then to memory. The long dusk is not empty. It has a different music. White dwarfs cool toward black, their heat surrendered into the larger room. Neutron stars age like ancient iron bells that still hold a tone when struck, though no hand will strike them. Black holes keep their quiet gravity, dark hearths around which little can be seen, but much can be felt. On the farthest pages, pages that feel more like equations than afternoons, physicists sketch yet slower processes, like the slow leak of a black hole's mass into faint radiation, a kind of sighing that takes numbers beyond comprehension to complete. We say these things with soft certainty. They are forecasts made from rules that work well now, but tomorrow's instruments might add a footnote, and the tone of our voice leaves room for that. There are deeper conjectures, careful maybes about whether the building blocks of matter themselves are eternal, whether protons last forever, or eventually choose another state. If they do change, the change would come so late that the word future hardly covers it. In such vistas, the universe moves from the busy specificity of star fields to a broad, thin, quiet particles drifting with nowhere to gather, lights gone to embers, gone to ash. It is sometimes called heat death, which sounds harsher than the image deserves. A better phrase for bedtime might be cosmic rest, a room that has shared out its energies so evenly there is nothing left to do but be. And yet, notice how the mind resists the idea of finality, not out of fear, but out of habit. We live inside cycles, nested in cycles, the heartbeat, the breath, the day, the season, the lifespan of a tree, the turn of a galaxy. When we reach for the far future, we carry those cycles with us, like lucky stones. Perhaps that is why even the grandest dusks in our models feel, at the edges, like the start of something else. Some cosmologies play with rebirths or bubbles, regions where new rooms open, new arrows unspool. We cannot see such places from here. We can only speak of them as possibilities the equations allow. It is enough to know that the story, even in its quietest telling, never quite loses its capacity for surprise. Closer to home, the future we can touch is gentler. Our sun, well before its red giant years, will keep a steady hand on our days. Seasons will continue their tilt-written poetry. Tides will lean and lean back. The moon will drift a little farther away each century, a soft politeness in gravity's long diplomacy. On human scales, this is the tempo that matters, the one under your window, wind in trees, the small change of constellations across months, the way dawn returns not with certainty, but with kindness. There is comfort in letting the unhurriedness of these futures wash over the mind. Very little in the grand story requires action from us tonight. We are not stewards of the cosmic web. We are its citizens. Our duty, if we wish to have one, is local to one another, to the small sphere of life that chose our star's light and made of it leaves and laughter, and the occasional late cup of tea. The universe will keep its long promises, whether we set an alarm or not, knowing that we can set softer intentions, like resting well, like greeting morning without hurry. A gentle chronology, then fewer numbers than seasons. Now galaxies bright, nurseries active, messages arriving in every register. Later mergers that write calligraphy across the sky. Star birth, slowing to a hum. Later still, elder stars warming their last rooms. Dwarf embers taking up the long watch. Much later, far islands of light sailing beyond sight, the local family keeping close around a central hearth. After that, eras whose names don't fit in the mouth, changes that make little claim on the heart, because their pace is too slow for worry. Whatever the fine print, the rhythm is a decrescendo, a diminuendo in which the melody remains lovely even as it softens. Bring it back to the room. The future you can feel is the next breath. It arrives whether invited or not, and accepting it is a kind of gratitude. Imagine the covers as a calm galaxy you've drawn around yourself, arms of fabric circling, a warm core at the place where your hands rest. The lamp is a small star, declining toward its own quiet. When you turn it off, the room does not fall to zero. It becomes a nebula of dark, full of shapes your eyes can't quite name. You are safe in that dark. The universe is good at making rooms in which rest is possible. Somewhere far beyond the rooftops, a red dwarf makes its steady music, a trillion-year lullaby. Somewhere else, a white dwarf cools atom by atom, patient as snowfall. Between them, a comet traces a private ellipse and thinks no thoughts about destiny. The scale of it frees you. You are allowed to be simple here. A person in a bed, listening to a story that goes on without requiring you to finish it. If sleep comes now, let it be the kind that trusts the night to keep its watch. If wakefulness lingers, let the mind idle on an image you like, a future sky with unfamiliar rivers of light, or a quiet galaxy city lit in soft gold, or just the shape your curtains make against the dim. Tomorrow will return to the nearest future, the smallest scale, where the story folds back into this room and this breath. For tonight keep only this: the universe does not hurry, and neither must you. Close your eyes a little more. The pencil sketch of tomorrow's cosmos is pleasant and pale. The page does not need ink, it needs time, and time, as we've learned, is generous with those who rest. Let's return, gently, to the smallest cosmos you can hold, the room you're in, the lamp like a tame star, the blanket's quiet gravity drawing you a little closer to center. Outside, the night tends its ordinary business. Leaves hush, distant tires comb the road. Somewhere a window clicks as the house settles, old timber remembering warm days and cool evenings. All the vastness we've wandered lives here too, nested and scaled, patient and close. Breathe once, long and easy, and notice how the body answers. In that breath is the story of stars, oxygen spun in elder furnaces, carried through nights beyond counting, invited into your lungs by a blue planet's soft insistence on life. In your pulse is the steady rhythm of orbits, a drum that matches walking and waves and the turning of the earth. We could talk about molecules and muscles, about chemistry's kindness and nerves that listen like astronomers to faint signals. Or we could simply let it be a feeling: you are a small light and you are enough. Things that seemed far now arrive as ordinary comforts. Gravity is the weight of the covers and the reassurance of down. Filaments and voids are the way furniture leaves pathways for you to walk in the dark, and the way open space in a room eases the mind. The observable bubble is your circle of lamp glow. Everything beyond it is not lost, only softened. Messages in starlight are the ways familiar objects reflect the lamp's tone. Gold on wood, muted silver on the page, each telling you what it's made of, how it holds light, how it gives it back. Time's arrow is the tea cooling, the thoughts loosening, the day setting its tools down. Futures that don't hurry are tomorrow's dishes waiting kindly in the sink, and the next clean page waiting without impatience. We spend many hours scanning horizons, news, plans, possibilities, until the heart mistakes distance for duty. Tonight is a permission slip to be local. Your address is adequate to wonder. Your window holds a sky that is entire for your purposes. Even if clouds have gathered, they are part of that sky, not an interruption. Even if the city brightens the low ceiling with a faint amber, that too is a star of human making, a constellation of neighborhoods at rest. Close your eyes partway and let the room dissolve into a planet-sized impression, a dark hemisphere turned toward the vast, the other side keeping its appointments with dawn. In the dark hemisphere, tiny islands of light, porches, bed lamps, the stubborn glow of fish tanks, a street light keeping watch the way a lighthouse might. Your lamp is one of those islands, a local galaxy in miniature, with its own gentle weather and its one bright companion, your face, your hands, the soft topography of the bed. If you listen, you'll hear the ordinary physics of home. Air warms near the bulb and rises, cools near the window and falls. The floor's coolness is a local polar night. The pillow's warmth is a quiet summer. The blanket pulled up is an atmosphere thickening, keeping temperatures steady so life can be simple. You've made a climate here, a microcosm with friendly gradients. Within it, you are the observer and the landscape. Both. We've carried big words through this night: horizon, entropy, expansion, and set them down gently like shells on a table. You can pick one up now if you wish. Turn it in your mind. See how every frightening edge has rounded in the handling, how every unknown has become less a door you must unlock and more a winding path you might someday walk for pleasure, or leave the shells where they are and let the table be empty. Emptiness is a generous host. It makes space for sleep, a soft chronology just for you. Light left the sun 8 minutes ago and arrived as a warm touch on your cheek. The planet has turned a degree or two since you settled. Somewhere in the house, heat moved from a coil into the air, then into the walls, then into the night, and none of it needed managing. A book spine cooled by a fraction of a degree. The kettle remembered steam and then forgot. Your eyes grew heavier with every paragraph, as if gravity had found a way to be kind in smaller and smaller rooms. If thoughts return, lists, worries, a replay of something said, treat them as passing satellites. They are bright, then gone behind the limb of the Earth. You don't have to track their orbits tonight. Let them drift into the planet's shadow. The sky looks still, only because it is vast. Your mind can feel still for the same reason. Make the room a little vaster by noticing what is easy: the weight of the blanket, the hollow in the mattress that fits your shoulder, the even measure of your breath. These are your constants. They are as dependable as the constellations, and closer. There is a tenderness in the idea that the universe remembers itself through us, not in any grand way. No pomp, no special pleading, simply because carbon learned to speak, and hydrogen learned to hum, and somewhere on a blue world, a listener found the night calming. Your listening completes the story as much as any telescope. Without a pair of eyes at a windowsill, a galaxy is still beautiful, but with them it becomes companionable. The cosmos is not asking to be solved before sleep. It is offering to sit with you a while, to share silence, to hum its house hum, the same ancient warmth we began with, until your breathing matches it. If you're still awake, you can choose a small ritual. Think of one star and place it over your bed like a quiet pin of light. Picture its spectrum, colors you cannot see, lines you cannot name, standing in for all the letters we've learned to read. Let that imagined star become a dot on a soft map that includes your room, your street, your town, the long lane of our spiral arm, the wider watershed with the beautiful name. Then let the map fold in on itself until it becomes a single point again, the feeling of being held. Soon the lamp goes out. When it does, nothing essential changes. The light just trades places, outside for inside, star for memory, ceiling for closed eyes. You remain within a patient architecture, rooms within rooms, each offering the same invitation. You can rest here. You can let go. The filaments can keep their watch without you. Gravity will not forget what it holds. Horizons do not need your attention to stay where they are. Time's arrow will run on its own until morning, and then you can catch up with it as slowly as you like. If there is a last thought, let it be a small and ordinary blessing. May your night be like a clear sky with a few kindly clouds. May your breath find its tide. May your dreams, if they come, take the form of slow rivers and lanterns on calm water. And may you wake the way galaxies form stars, without hurry, with just enough light to begin. Close your eyes completely now. The house hum steadies, the world leans toward its gentler hours. From a long way off, old photons finish their journey and become warmth on the air. They do not ask to be seen. They are content to arrive and rest.